Hey guys, welcome back to the Arthritis Podcast, official podcast of digital and creative media works, where each week we take something from pop culture and try to break it down to better understand it. My name is David.
My name is Ben.
And we got a little special treat for you this week.
Because it's me! Wah!
Today's my birthday, so what better way to treat myself than to not run the show?
Absolutely.
So it's Ben's Beast this week.
It's my one.
Well, a reverse AFA pod, a podoffer. A podoffer?
A podoffer? Are we going with that?
Well, what would you prefer?
Wouldn't it be like Depoffer?
Shit, you're right. I can't spell,
AFA
so I
pod.
wouldn't worry about it. Yeah. Depoffer?
Depoffer.
This week is a Depoffer.
This week's Depoffer.
Or I guess it could be like yeah, no, you're right. Your thing's better. Yeah, because I'm not running it, but, it's a month of stuff we wanted to talk about that we enjoyed. Yes. And it's my birthday, and what do I enjoy more than just fucking taking a week off? So
just good old having a break.
I'm going to sit here like Lord Muck, and you're going to take us away. So
you're going to be like, yeah. I do agree with that point.
Oh, wait, do I have to do jokes?
Yeah, you do have to do. You have to be funny this time.
I'm not good with those.
Yeah. I mean, I could just one-man show this thing. I mean, it's normally me doing all the work anyway.
Knock.
So. Who's there?
No, I got nothing.
All right.
Yeah, what do you got for us this week, then? What are we covering?
So to this week, man, you really need to not let me do these.
Well,
episodes.
you want me to do the intro?
No, it's fine. This week, we're doing. This month.
I can segue in if you want. Do you
want
want me to do the segue?
Yes, please do it, David.
I'll take over this ship for a minute. This month we're talking about all things that we just thoroughly enjoy. It's my birthday month.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
So we figured, what better way to celebrate,
exactly.
my life and stuff that's good instead of torturing ourselves with trying to pick up on things that are really complicated. We're going to overthink everything anyway.
Yeah, of course.
So we figured, why not do stuff we like? So this week I figured, why not talk about a game that you really love, that I played a little bit of, that we've talked about before, we've made videos about before, but I don't think we've yet explored it in the kind of depth that it warrants, given the success that it doesn't have. I think it deserves much more credit and recognition than it has had, because this week we're talking about
the genius of Dragon's Dogma. Thank you, David. Couldn't have said it better myself.
I'm going to cut out the pause for where I set it up, and it'll sound very
Right, it'll sound really good?
Yeah.
Cool. Or you just leave it in. I don't know. You're the one that edits these.
I can make it longer.
So, Dragon's Dogma is a action role-playing video game developed and published by Capcom for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 in the year 2012 of our Lord, Coney 2012.
Big thank you to
and
Jesus.
And it had subsequent releases on the PC, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and the Nintendo Switch.
Everything.
God bless.
Everything but
it's
your
on
toaster.
everything.
Everything but your toaster, like Skyrim. It's not on cell phones yet, so one day.
No, not yet, but it will be eventually, I imagine. So this game's a bit of a cult classic, bit of a classic hit. Not a lot of people played it when it came out on the PS3.
Not a lot of people
or the
play it
Xbox. Now. It's got more of an audience now. When
it?
When it came out on PC, that was a big splash. That's when I played it for the first time back in the year of our father, 2015.
And that was when
I didn't look it up.
That was when it was the full expansion. It was Dark Arisen, wasn't it?
Yeah, so that's Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen, which is pretty much the only way you can get this game now, is you're going to have the full...
It's a bit like trying to buy Dark Souls 1. It comes with all of it. Yeah,
and I mean, we'll get into why that's kind of a shit idea, but that's for later in the episode. Should we get into the summary? Because that's a...
usually we do a quick roundtable of our experience with the thing.
Sure, okay,
we don't have to,
normally we do. No, I mean, it's probably pretty clear what I think about this.
Yeah, you seem to really enjoy it.
I really like this game.
I've played the whole thing through once, but that's I didn't spend a lot of time with it. I just kind of played it through to beat it.
Did you play through all of it?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I played through the story on the Xbox 360.
Okay, because
yeah. This was the game.
I thought I'd played this game all the way through when I first played it.
And then you had
Turns out I was wrong.
This was the game that I bought off a recommendation from a review that I watched on television by Good Game.
Oh,
that was the first time I ever saw. It was the first time
was this when Hex was on there?
It was the first time it was Hex, and it was the first time I'd ever seen Hex.
That's old. Yeah.
She was so convincing I bought the game. That's how good she is at reviews. So
Jesus Christ.
Shout outs to anyone that knows what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's an oldie.
Yeah, so I just thought this was a bit of a fun callback. But yeah, I enjoyed it at the time. I didn't think anything of it, but I think since, as we've discussed it over and over again, I kind of see some of its value, but I'm hoping that you can enlighten.
There's definitely some value in here. So we'll get into the summary. This is a bit of a long one. There's also a lot redacted. So if you've played this game before and you're pulling your hair out of over all the details I'm missing, deal with it. This is a half an hour show.
This is quite a long show.
Small request, don't at me. The game opens with a prologue where the knight Savant is leading a quest against an apocalyptic dragon threatening the end of the world. As Savant approaches the dragon, the scene cuts to an undetermined amount of time later in the land of Grancis, where our protagonist is living a quiet life in the fishing town of Casadus. Suddenly, Casadus is attacked by a dragon. While trying to defend the town, our protagonist is downed by the dragon, who then steals their heart, as in the dragon steals our heart. You can choose the gender, it's hard to explain.
Also, when you say heart, you mean literally, not like it gets your...
pulls it out, munches it.
No, but I think people might think you mean like it gets your affections, you know? Steals your heart.
He rips your
Literally
heart out
rips
with
your
your
heart
claw and eats it. This marks you as the Arisen, a mortal human who is destined to slay the dragon. More on that later. As the Arisen, our protagonist is now able to command a race of subservient beings called pawns. This is as weird as it sounds. While investigating the pawns, the Arisen, as they are now called by everyone in the game, meets Mercedes, a captain from a neighboring army at a nearby encampment. The encampment is suddenly attacked by a Hydra, which the Arisen helps dispatch. Mercedes decides to take the Hydra's head as a token to the Duke of Grancis and asks the Arisen to join. Once in Grand Sorin, the capital of Grancis, ruled by the Duke Edmund Dragonsbane, more on that later.
I love the names.
The Arisen is tasked with assisting the local worm hunt guild around Grand Sorin. While investigating some rumors around the city, the Arisen learns of a doomsday cult called the Salvation, who are trying to bring forth the end of the world through the summoning of the dragon that stole the Arisen's heart, called Grigori. As time passes, more and more monsters are being reported around Grancis, with the blame landing squarely on the Salvation. The Arisen infiltrates the Salvation's secret hideout and confronts the leader Elysian, who confesses to being behind the increase of monsters in an attempt to call forth the dragon Grigori and the end times. After the Arisen dispatches of Elysian goons, he begins to summon the dragon and thus the end of the world. Grigori appears from the skies, landing on Elysian and immediately killing him. Grigori tells the Arisen that they have become much stronger and challenges them to face him and stop the apocalypse before flying off. The Arisen treks to the dragon's lair, unknowingly following in the footsteps of the Knight Savant. When the Arisen faces Grigori, he offers them a choice: fight and kill him, or sacrifice their beloved, a character the Arisen has grown close to throughout the game, more on that later, to become the new Dragon's Bane and replace the current Duke of Grand Sorin. Ooh.
That's a spicy revelation.
Yeah. The Arisen fights and kills Grigori, who returns the Arisen's heart and grants the world more time before the apocalypse. However, in one final act, Grigori calls upon an endless night and opens up a bottomless chasm in the middle of Grand Sorin, destroying a large portion of the city. The Arisen returns to Grand Sorin to report to the Duke, who is now deathly ill as his immortality granted to him by the dragon has been stripped away. The Duke attacks the Arisen, convinced that they took the dragon's bargain as he did, and has cursed him to steal the throne. The Arisen escapes persecution, but is cornered at the edge of the endless chasm in the middle of Grand Sorin, the Everfall. The Arisen falls into the Everfall, only to find out, as the name suggests, that the bottom of the pit opens up to the sky above the pit. Very convenient. The Everfall is filled with terrific monsters brought in by the dragon's final act, along with numerous lost pawns. By assisting one of these pawns, the Arisen is able to open up a portal to a higher plane of existence and meets with the Seneschal, a godlike being in the form of the Knight Savant who maintains the order in the world. This Seneschal offers the Arisen another choice: turn back now to a quiet life in Casadis, or kill them and become the new Seneschal. The Arisen fights and kills the Seneschal with God's Bane, a blade granted to the Arisen by the Seneschal as the only implement that can kill a god, thus taking their place on the throne and walking the world as the invisible, immortal Seneschal for all of eternity. The Arisen, being bored with eternal life as a god, eventually kills themselves with the God's Bane, breaking the cycle and falling to the earth with their pawn. Upon landing, the pawn awakens on the beach of Casadis inside the Arisen's body, the dragon's curse on the world reverted, and their beloved approaching them from the shore. Credits.
It's like a lot.
New Game Plus. That's the end of the summary.
Oh.
So, I had to leave out a lot.
But there's still though.
Because
I never connected the dots with all that.
Yeah, so there's a lot in there that I had to skip over because this is an RPG and there is a lot of just extra stuff.
It'd be like trying to do like a Skyrim. Well,
it's just like
Skyrim's not a summary. Like a Skyrim's not an RPG. Like Fallout New Vegas. Trying to summarize that'd be fucking impossible.
Yeah, and this is really a case of like this is just like the main plot, and like there's a lot of other stuff, But that's really all you need to know.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, how far through...
I got to the false ending.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and then I was like,
no,
I'm done.
That's exactly what I did. Yeah, a lot of people play this game, they'll beat the dragon, they'll get up to the Everfall, which is kind of presented as this kind of just like, oh, if you just want to fuck around and fight a lot of bosses, then here's a bunch of randomly generated dungeons you can fuck around in the Everfall. But if you do some quests and you actually do a bit of searching, you help the lost pawns that you normally just like, yeah, whatever, pawns, don't care. Then yeah, it just gets a bit buck wild.
Are we going to loop back to the whole pawns thing? Because there's a lot going on there that I find very interesting.
So from a mechanical perspective and a story perspective, they're quite interesting. I want to quickly go over a few things that will kind of fill in some holes and maybe explain a bit more about this world.
Yeah.
So some of the alternate choices that you can make in this game. So one of them being whether you take the Dragon's Bargain, another one being whether you decide to fight the Seneschal or not. They lead to game overs. So if you make that choice, the game is like, nah, that's not what you're meant to do.
Okay.
But they still...
Where does that come from? Design? Like, does that...
What it does is it's really a case of like, canonically, this is not what your character does.
Okay.
But the interesting thing is that a lot of the world is explained through these like game over cutscenes. So one of them, and kind of like the obvious one, is that if you take the Dragon's Bargain, where he kills your beloved, so your beloved is, we'll get to that in a little bit. If you kill your beloved, who will just be one of the characters in the game, then you're presented with a cutscene with your character on the throne in Grand Sorin as the new Duke, and that's literally it. Game over. And that is like, that on its own, you're just like, yeah, you take the bargain, you become the king. That's what the Duke did. The dragon tells you that, it's that revelation. It was like, yeah, okay, whatever. But that's kind of interesting because you're like, all right, if someone takes the bargain, then they become...
Makes sense.
They become the Duke.
With you.
The other main choice comes from the Seneschal. So when he gives you the option, oh, you can turn back, go back to your life, just relax out with your beloved.
Just fucking chill out, dude.
Just fucking chill out for a bit. If you make that choice, then if you go back to Casadus, everything's fine. It's all peachy. And, if you try to leave the town, it just plays a cutscene. It's like, everything's fine. Game over. You're like, okay.
Okay. So what is it I guess it's conditioning you to kind of
be like, you have, well, it continues with the story, but you have to, it's like, no, we'll show you what happens, but like, don't do that.
Don't do that. Guy, don't worry about it.
Here's a trophy, go back, do the other option. The interesting one, and this, I did this accidentally because I am bad at video games. But
guilty also.
But I died to the Seneschal in the fight. And I was like, oh, you can actually die to him. I was like, that's kind of weird. He did this like really dumb explosion and took all my health. And I was like, oh, I died. Oh my God, that's probably fine.
Was it a whole canon thing where like something happened?
Well, no, like you're not meant to die, but I died. And then like this cutscene plays where my character dies and she kind of falls out of the sky. Played a female because it's the best way to play the game. And then as she's falling, she turns into a dragon, flies off, and attacks Casadus.
Fuck off.
And I was like, oh.
Dude.
I was like, what the fuck? It's like, so you're telling me that this world that you're in, where a dragon attacks a town, takes someone's heart, that person then goes, kills the dragon, or becomes the Duke, in which case someone else becomes the Arisen, kills the dragon.
Either way,
the dragon eventually dies. And they will eventually fall down the Everfall, go into this alternate plane of existence. And some of them, because I don't know if I pointed this out, but the Seneschal is Savan from the prologue, who we see. The most you see of him is him going to the dragon, then you don't see what he does. But I guess from this, it's implied that he kills the dragon and becomes the Seneschal.
Okay, with you.
So there's all these paths of like, this is where different choices take you. if you make it to the seneschal and you die, you become the dragon that then creates another arisen, and they may go through, kill you because you are the dragon.
Presumably, the things that always happen are a dragon attacks the town.
Dragon attacks a town.
Takes a heart and makes an arisen.
Takes a heart, and that arisen either becomes the duke of this place, or kills the dragon.
Yo,
and becomes...
this is so Japanese, dude. This is like some Dark Souls shit. Like...
and like the best part is that if you then go into New Game Plus and you replay the game all over again, the Savan isn't the seneschal anymore. Your previous character is now the seneschal.
Oh, dude, that's tight.
It just loops around. Yeah.
That's fucking cool. I fuck with that so hard. That's awesome. Okay. Yeah.
So it's interesting that like all this world building that they created is baked into these game over scenarios, because they really want you to have, the quote unquote full experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess kind of tying into this is the fact that the world that the game is in is so like well lived in. Like, I don't know if you know this when you played, but Grand Soren, this like major capital city, is just like 3 districts surrounded by just like rubble.
Yeah, I one of the things I picked up when I was playing it, at least, was that, and it's hard to do in video games too, because the sort of games as a medium, like you have the opportunity to communicate so much through environmental storytelling,
right?
Either really well or not. If you don't do it at all, it doesn't necessarily detract from it, but it makes the world feel less real. And I think that one of the things Dragon's Dogma does really well is that when I'm in those towns and in the cities and like even traversing, like trying to get somewhere before nightfall or whatever, like it never there's never a sense where I'm like, oh, this feels like a bit of a game. I'm like, oh, this is like a world that's been lived in that I happen to be playing a game in. Yeah. I think I got the same impression from the city where I was like, oh, history has happened here. I just happen to be currently passing through.
Yeah, even like, there's like a series of escort quests that you can take, which is literally just you'll escort a soldier just like across the map to like this beach on the edge of the continent, and they'll just stand there, look out to the ocean for a bit, and then they'll be like, thanks, and you're like, what are you doing? And he's just like, I just wanted to come here. You're like, that's fucking weird, dude. Okay. He's like, I just wanted to be here. And it's like, it's so not important.
That's like what a normal person would say.
Yeah, he's just like, I just want to go to this beach because I like it, but also there's a lot of monsters. Can you escort me there? And you're just like, sure, if you give me like some money. And he's like, yeah, absolutely.
That's so charming too, because it's like, I mean, one of the things that we talk about often with games is like, or with media in general, is missing that human thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like that little tweak of like, that makes it feel real, where it's like, yeah, I just really like this beach. That's not like, you can't write that. Other game developers would be like, no. Yeah. There needs to be a motivation here that's complex and interesting and exciting. It's like, nah, dude just fucking likes the beach.
Yeah, even the character of Mercedes, who's this, she's a sort of like a general or like a captain from an army of like a neighboring kind of province, kingdom, whatever. And she's sort of been sent over to be like to sort of lead in the effort against the dragon, basically. But you eventually find out that she's really only been sent over as just like a token ally.
Right.
Because most of the other neighboring kingdoms are like so kind of like weirded out and kind of just like, Grancis is a bit wonky. Like, their duke's been alive for a long fucking time. Like, mind you, because the duke is immortal, because he's technically an arisen.
After a while, that becomes like a thing that people talk about.
We don't really like this, but we're just going to send Mercedes. Yeah, go. And she has like a whole like arc where she's just like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, no one respects me. Like, for one, she's like one of the only female characters in the game.
There's a lot of yikes about that.
So it's like, she has like this whole like arc where it's just like, I'm just like a token. Like, no one treats me.
Which is interesting given the relationship that you have with the pawns. I think there's some parallels in this game that I find really fascinating with that, where...
Yeah, so the pawns are these... They're human... So... Mechanically, they serve as like party members. They're
the equivalent of like companions in like a Dragon Age.
And there's like a cool like multiplayer system where you have your one pawn, so you and your pawn, and you can customize them and you can give them gear and you can give them, you can like level them up and you can choose what skills they have. But then you have 2 other slots which can be filled with other people's pawns, like other people in other parts of the world. It's a video game. So you can have this thing where you build a team with your 2 guys and then you rent, basically. You hire 2 others. And the idea is that the Arisen as a person, like these pawns, they don't have any will. They don't like decide to do anything. They just like stand around and wait. But the Arisen is like can command them, sort of, they can have them as allies.
Yeah.
And it grants them like will and like a heart and like things like that.
Yeah.
Yada yada yada. It's all a bit weird and gross. But long story short, mechanically, it's just like we just need an excuse for you to boss 3 other people around without them questioning.
But I think, I don't know, but world building wise, it has or like even, I don't know.
Story wise, they do play a role in sort of the whole seneschal kind of alternate reality, looping reality, especially in the sense where when you're when you fall from the sky at the end of the game and then suddenly it's interesting how they do it, but they really show that your pawn is now inside your Arisen's body through various techniques. It's quite clever.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that it's sort of this idea of just like, you've granted this pawn like a heart and a life, and then they go forth and do their thing.
I guess like there's something to that idea of when you're giving something agency that previously didn't have it or didn't want it. That's an interesting, like that's different than like what Mercedes goes through, which is like she already has all those things, and then she has to grapple with the fact she doesn't really have any of them.
Yeah,
and I think there's a cool parallel there with her kind of narrative of her kind of becoming disillusioned with the situation and then kind of having to take matters into her own hand versus the pawns who kind of do whatever you say, and then it's only when like you complete your journey that one of them gets to become their own thing.
Yeah,
there's something to that that's kind of I don't know, like we talk about like thematic mirroring and stuff sometimes, but for me at least, like in a game sense, that stuff can be hard to stick in a landing perspective because you're relying on, as you said, if you haven't finished it and played it as like got to New Game Plus, you don't realize that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where, that's why when I talk about, I'm going to try and stop talking about Dark Souls, but that's why when I talk about Dark Souls, and particularly Dark Souls 2, it's different than every other game that exists, because if you spend the time and you go through and you like, okay, so there's an item in Dark Souls 2, New Game Plus, and New Game, sorry, New Game Plus, New Game Plus 5.
Count the pluses.
New Game Plus 5.
5 pluses.
The further into New Game Plus you get, the more close to Primordial Souls the drops become.
Right.
So like you kill a boss. It doesn't, I don't get to it second, the rest, whatever. The point I'm trying to make is that there is a thing in New Game 5 Plus that is inaccessible to everyone else who doesn't get there, that tells you so much about the story that you didn't need to know to find the game fun or find the world building engaging.
Right.
But when you get there, you're like, oh, okay, I understand so much more now. And I feel like that's what Dragon's Dogma is doing. If you kept playing that cycle again and again, you would start to understand the thematic overtures.
Yeah. So that's really interesting to talk about Dark Souls, because I also have the words Dark Souls written in my notes.
Wait, ladies and gentlemen, this is an AFA first. David and Ben talking about Dark Souls together.
Dark Souls again.
Not forcing it. What is that a good segue?
Well, so you've played this game. This game has such a strong emphasis on being prepared. It's kind of different to Dark Souls, where Dark Souls is just like, it's hard. This is like you need to plan your journey. Yeah, you know where you are, where you need to go. You'll get you can walk around the world and learn things about like little tidbits, or like, where should I go? What's the best way to get to this place? Your pawns will learn things about how the best way to fight different monsters. When your pawn, it goes off and helps someone else, or if another player rents your pawn, and then they can come back with knowledge that you haven't done, of things you haven't done yet. Mm-hmm. So if you start a quest, one of your pawns might be like, I know the way, let's go this way, and then they'll actually lead you. So this game very much, it wants you to always be prepared. It always wants you to kind of think ahead and, use the resources that it gives you to sort of overcome different challenges. There's rules in the world where, like, don't be out at nighttime because you'll die. Make sure you've got curatives for certain ailments or you'll die.
Yeah. You'll spend a lot of time.
Don't take on tough enemies or you'll die.
The first 15 hours of the game are you mostly dying a lot.
Yeah, and you'll just be like, what the hell? And
But I think the thing is, you know it's because you didn't prepare. Like, the game is very good at... The first few times when I died from, like, getting a dumb disease or, like, not bringing enough, like, like, not getting back to the city early enough, like, in the evening, I was like, oh, that was my fault. I fucked up.
Yeah. and there'll be like roaming high level monsters that'll just like land and fuck you up, and you're meant to run, like you're meant to just book it. But anyone, like most people who play video games will be like, oh, it's a boss battle, I'm gonna take on the boss battle, and you'll die.
This game is like, no, fucking run, dude.
The game's like, no, get the fuck out of there.
You gotta get out of there, man. That thing's gonna kill you.
Yeah, even to the point where the way your pawn works is that they'll kind of learn different traits of like battling and things like that based on what you do. So if you try to take on all these really tough fights, when someone rents your pawn, they'll also be like, that griffin, I'm going to fuck that griffin up. And they'll be like, no, don't fuck the griffin up. They're like, I'm going to fuck up the griffin. Like, no! And people will be like, your pawn just kept running to their death. I hate it. It's 0 out of 10. And you're just like, oh, I should probably start teaching my pawn some good habits. Like, don't fight the griffin. It's difficult.
Which, do you think that, because, okay, when we talk about Absolver, not to sidetrack us too much, when we talk about Absolver, they had that asynchronous multiplayer thing where you didn't know that the NPCs were multiplayer.
Right.
Were other people. This is kind of that, except that it's like train.
Not Absolver.
Not Absolver.
The other one.
Ashen. Ashen, beg your pardon. Where there's the asynchronous multiplayer where you don't know that NPCs are players.
Yeah.
This is kind of that, except you don't know how an NPC is, or you don't know how your pawns are going to behave because you don't know how someone else played.
Yeah. And you can people will kind of like, I guess, like meta game their pawns. They'll teach them to act a certain way because that's what people find quote unquote most useful. Mm-hmm. But like in general, like just that natural way of learning. Like I will, when I played the game for the first time, I would have, I think I probably had like 10, I probably rented about 10 sets of other people's pawns throughout my first playthrough. And it was the kind of thing where like, there was some, I'd have like 2 others, and one of them I'd be like, you're awesome. The other one I'd be like, you're fucking useless. And it's just, they're the same level, they're different classes, but they fit the roles that I want, but they just act in a certain way where I'm just like, you're a useless piece of garbage. I'm going to get rid of you. I'm going to keep you because you're cool.
Trained poorly, yeah.
Yeah. And that's, so I want to get into sort of why I want to ruin your thoughts on why this game's like Dark Souls. So we talked about a lot about how this game is kind of like Dark Souls. It's really difficult. Oh, it's like really hard if you die a lot.
Well, it's not what I was talking about, but yeah, sure.
So this happened to me when I played this game. So I picked this game up on the Switch because I was like, hell yeah, it's on the Switch. So I played it on PC and I played it through to what I thought was the end of the game. And this one I was like, all right, I'm gonna get through the end. I'm gonna start New Game Plus. New Game Plus is a completely different game.
Okay.
So the game's really like when you're playing game for the first time and you're in a new save, and if you don't really know what you're doing, the game is difficult. Like it's hard. Like it doesn't hold your hand. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of like weird mechanics, and even like if you don't know what quests you should do, quests can just like disappear, or they can like fail really easily, and you're like, can I like do the quest again? They're like, no. You're gonna have to play through the whole game and come back. And you're like, okay. Like there's a lot of instances like that. But New Game Plus is a goddamn joke. So let me just roll some things past you about what New Game Plus is.
Okay.
Difficulty is unchanged. The game does not get any more difficult. It just starts again. Yet the player maintains all progress towards their level, their vocation, their gear. Additionally, any gear that you are wearing when you kill the dragon in your previous run through gets what's called Dragon Forged, which is basically the highest level of enhancement that the gear can take, except for the DLC. But so once you beat the dragon, you're basically wearing just like this insane gear. And the game's just like, New Game Plus, sure, we'll just take you with that insane gear and we'll plunk you in level 1 areas. And you're like, this is easy. Like, this isn't hard. On top of that, any port crystals you have, so port crystals are the game's sort of fast travel, but you place them down as a player.
Yeah.
Any port crystals that you placed in your previous run stay there when you come into New Game Plus. So, those quests where it's just like you have to travel across the whole map to do this one thing and then come all the way back. If you know what's going on and you're like, that quest was a fuck around, if you run over there in your current game, you put a port crystal down, you go to New Game Plus, and they're just like, God, it'll be pretty hard to get all the way over there. I'm like, no, just fucking whoop, zip over there.
Does that work for you thematically? Because I guess if you're the pawn who's been trained and gone through all that,
Well, for me, what I really started to realize is that that once you hit that New Game Plus, the game stops being Dark Souls and becomes Monster Hunter, where
Oh no!
you're fucking Capcom. I don't hate it, but it definitely changes tack. Where now, instead of
Now you're an anime god.
well, yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
instead of the game being this like track where you have to like maintain, you have to maintain your curatives and you have to stock up on things and you have to make sure your gear is all in check and stuff. Now it's just like you're this goddamn beefy, insanely powerful character just blowing through everything. And the thing is, no one reacts differently. Everyone's just like, hey, could you please help me out making this cupcake? And you're just like this ironclad monstrosity.
Yes.
You're just like, yes!
I will make your cupcake.
Well, even on top of that, like when you play the game through a second time, you have an idea of just like, all right, these quests are important. These quests I don't have to worry about. One of the most important quests in the game is escorting this little girl around Grand Soren, because if she likes you enough at the end of it, she'll give you a golden idol, which is one of the most important items in the game. And if you don't do it at the right time, that item disappears. So when you're playing through the game and you Game Plus, you're like, all right, I gotta escort this girl. I gotta not fuck it up. You're wearing this like fucking chunky armor walking around.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, if you think about it, you can then go and fight the dragon again, which means you can Dragon Forge a second set of gear, and you can just give that to your pawn. Suddenly, New Game Plus, you and your pawn are these giant monstrosities walking around. So the game is, and so part of this is also the fact that the Everfall, when it's it's full of like it's all these full of these boss monsters and there's all these like dungeons you can go through. That's like the end game. Like that's like you can like fighting these bosses is what you're actually like meant to be doing. There's also like another dragon you can fight, which is like a whole nother fucking thing. But it becomes this thing where like it's like the complete opposite of Dark Souls, where like in that game you finish the game, you're like, all right, New Game Plus, we're gonna do it's like the same thing, but now there's a twist because it's really hard and it's really different, it's really interesting. In this game, it's just like, yeah, you want to do that again? That was fun, wasn't it?
I kind of don't hate it.
Well, it's really funny. So I played through when I played on the Switch, my first playthrough took, I'm gonna say 20 hours. My second playthrough took like 3. I got up to the dragon,
Amazing.
and I was wearing like dragon armor. I was wearing armor you get from killing the dragon.
I'm good with you, dude.
And I'm like, dude, I'm gonna fuck you up. And like in my first playthrough, I was like, it was this really hard fight, and me and my pawns, it was like neck and neck the whole time. And this time, I just like grabbed my sword, and I just jumped and swung a bit, and he died in like a minute. And I was just like, well, that was easy. And then I dragon forged my armor. I gave it to my pawn.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, for me, it's such a case of there's a lot of games out there which kind of exist in this weird space where they'll have like a story and they'll have missions, but really the point of the game is to just grind it all out.
Yeah.
So stuff like Destiny or like Anthem or like The Division.
Yeah.
Like that's such like a rich world, but you're just kind of running through it for good gear. This to me manages to hit both being like this very in-depth and difficult and like treacherous and hard and engaging experience. But then when you get through it, the game just opens up and says, hey, you want to fuck around for a bit?
Kind of like that, yeah.
There's videos of people where there's this one quest where you got to hunt a griffin. And normally what you do is you go out to this place and you put down some bait, and the griffin comes down, you fight it for a bit, and you wound it, and it flies off to this other place. So then you track it down, you chase it when it's wounded, when it's like nesting, and then you kill it when it's nesting, and it's like, oh my god, that was insane. And then you get to New Game Plus, and it's like, all right, you run out there, you put the bait down, and you stand there, charging your heavy attack, and the moment the griffin lands, you just let it loose, and you one-hit the griffin. You're like, done. Griffin hunt done. Like, it's just... It's in that kind of thing where it's just like, we have all these crazy mechanics and all these like in-depth systems, and it's like, when you're playing the game for the first time, that causes this thing where you just like, you don't really know what's going on, but it's like you're learning and you're like experiencing things. You're like, oh, that's really cool. This is really interesting. But then when it's just like, yeah, you finish the game, now you can just like do it again. It's just like, oh, I know how to cheese this.
That's so weird though, isn't it? Because for an RPG that when you play it the first time feels so tactile,
like gritty. Yeah.
It's interesting when you strip back those. I think what's interesting about that is it reveals what doesn't work about other RPGs.
Well, I think it's a weird way to do New Game Plus. Normally, when people talk about what New Game Plus is, it's like, it's like, okay, you keep your progression, but everything's really hard now. Like the game gets so difficult. Whereas this is the complete opposite, where it's just like, you know what, you've done your time.
You did the hard stuff. Hey man,
you've done the hard stuff. You know
here's
what?
some cool armor, dude.
Here's just some cool shit. You go fuck around for a bit.
Go fuck him up, man.
Yeah, if you want to do the dragon again, sure.
Go for
Be my
it.
guest. You can do it as much as you want.
3 hits, dude.
Yeah.
That's fucking fascinating. This game is so weird.
It's completely bonkers. And I think the funny thing is that when you even like the story works to some degree, where when you defeat the dragon, you're like, hooray, I did it, I beat the dragon. But there's that whole layer of just like, oh, you thought the dragon was a boss. How about God?
How about a god?
Yeah.
How about how you feel about that? And you're like, I don't know.
You're like,
man.
what the fuck? But you play New Game Plus enough times and he just becomes another thing that you do. This like killing the seneschal is just like, yeah, I just want to do New Game Plus. All right, let's go to the seneschal. Yeah, we'll kill him. Yeah, whatever. All right, stab myself in the heart. Yeah, fall down. Yeah, whatever. All right, cool. New Game Plus. Like it's this weird thing where it's just like it becomes just like a process. It's not like a big like mysterious moment of the game. It's just like here's just how you get to New Game Plus. You just got to become a god and then kill yourself.
Yeah.
While you're a god.
I don't know.
That's how you do New Game Plus.
Yeah, I'm sure there's something in that, like philosophically, but I don't know. Like,
but I'm not David, so I don't bring anything philosophical to the table.
I don't know. I think it's probably like an interesting mirror of like when, I mean, we've talked before about competence and things like that, and one of the things that that they talk about in Eastern philosophy is that idea of transitioning from not knowing how much you don't know to becoming a master.
Right.
There's the 4 key stages. So there's unconscious incompetence, where you don't know how bad you are.
Conscious.
There's conscious incompetence, where you know how bad you are and you've just started learning, you know how much you have to go.
There's unconscious competence.
No, then there's conscious competence.
Conscious competence.
Wait, conscious competence, where you have to actively work to be good, and that's
okay.
That jump between between conscious incompetence and conscious competence is when most people drop out. So
right.
That's when you go from you've just suddenly realized how much you have to learn to suddenly now when I work really, 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 really hard, I'm pretty okay. That jump is when most people they quit activities, whatever it is, whether it's like learning the piano or the guitar or writing or making video games or making software or running or whatever the thing is you're doing. That's when most people
running,
stop.
Don't remind me.
That's when most people stop, right?
That's where I stopped.
The final stage is unconscious competence, where you are so good at something that you can just do it.
Right.
So like that's kind of where I'm at with like the show that we make.
It's like the 10,000 hours.
That's the 10,000 hours. We've been doing this for 4.5 years. You can give me a film.
Jesus
and
Christ.
You can give me a film and like 30 minutes, and I can do the research. And I can get you a script that's profound.
I talked someone's ear off on Discord because they had the gall to mention John Wick 3. And they were just like, oh, what did you think about this? I was like, well, I thought it was really interesting. Yeah. There's writing these paragraphs. They're just like, oh, I just like the shooting and the guns. And I was like, yeah, fair enough.
Read that room wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that maybe speaks to that, where there's an interesting mirror there where it's like, okay, we start as like you're doing the hard stuff, and then it's a bit easier, and then it's a bit easier, and then you're a god.
And then it's just like, it's a joke. Yeah.
And then it gets to a threshold where like when you're a god, even though you still love it, it's not as fulfilling.
Right.
And there's something deeply like existential about that in a video game, to be able to communicate that. Like it's not like what I guess the equivalent is like when you watch someone that's like a Halo whiz, like people that are really good at Halo, they're in a match getting like, they're just streaking together kills and like headshotting people, doing all kinds of cool stuff that you can't imagine doing. But at a certain point, they're not even thinking; they're just doing it. And I feel like it's different with something like Dragon's Dogma, because even though you can just do it, it's also just that you have done it. It's a different kind of equation, but I think it mirrors that in an interesting way for games, where I think sometimes with games, if you play them for long enough, you lose your interest because you do become, or your character gets too strong, like you become too competent, they get too strong, and maybe that's why people gravitate, or certain people like us, I guess, or certain parts of the internet gravitate toward those games that don't reward that. They go, oh, you got this far, let's make it harder.
Yeah, well, I think that this like Yeah, no, I won't get into it. We're running out of time.
Okay, I was assuming you're gonna wrap up.
I could keep going, to be honest.
We can go. We can talk about it in the post show if you want.
Maybe a part 2.
Okay, well, we might do a part 2. Actually, we'll probably come back to this game at some point anyway. Because I probably want to play it.
There probably will be a second one coming out. Like, as much as this is a cult game, there are murmurs we're gonna get a sequel.
They've waited a minute, haven't they?
So yeah, there will be a part 2 when the second game comes out.
If dog bless. Do you have any recommendations for this week?
Oh shit! This is like the one thing I forgot to do.
Everything else?
I did everything else. I don't know, I've been playing like more VR, I guess.
Yeah.
I think Beat Saber literally just came out, version 1.0. So like that's pretty significant.
Yeah, that's like that.
Yeah, I think me and Adam are going to be playing Windlands 2, which is this crazy platformer video game VR thing. He may film it, he may not. I don't know. All right. Making Adam do anything. What have you got?
Wow, you are so bad at this.
I
Holy
cannot wait
shit.
for you to take back the reins.
My goodness, I was like, I'll see how long Ben goes without flailing. It was 30 seconds.
Yeah.
This week, what have I been checking out? Lindsay Ellis has a new video out. It's about how Disney fucked over Robin Williams with Aladdin.
I did watch.
It's really interesting.
Was that Lindsay Ellis?
Yeah, I think so.
No, it wasn't.
I'm pretty sure
it wasn't. Was that the one that Adam sent you?
No, it wasn't.
Because there was a... Was it? It wasn't Lindsay Ellis.
He might have sent you something else.
I definitely watched a video about how Robin Williams got fucked over. I don't think it was Lindsay Ellis. It may have been.
Bear with.
Unless like 6 YouTubers, well, 2.
It's currently like in the media cycle, but it was that one by Lindsay Ellis. That thumbnail.
Oh, was that? Oh, maybe I watched a different one.
Could've
definitely watched the... What? Maybe I'm just so used to her voice. It just
sounds like white noise.
It's just like generic. Not generic. I'm sorry, Lindsay Ellis.
You're fantastic.
You don't watch this anyway.
I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's great. I checked that out. Otherwise, I haven't really had time for media. What have I been listening to? I've been doing a lot of music. Mostly I've been getting like some weird like hip hop wells in Australia. Doing like a lot of Omar Musa this week.
Ooh.
Which I'm just like, stuff bangs and it's like kind of introspective too, which is good. So I'm kind of getting into that.
I think we're getting a new King Giz album soon.
Ooh-wee.
Another one. They're apparently like 2017. 4 albums in the year.
Coming at you.
Fucking. They're like what album?
Oh man,
this is gonna be album number 2 this year.
Yeah.
So that's.
It's gonna be a spicy
Very
one.
exciting.
I'm still kicking Logic's new album. It's weird, but I like it.
It's a weird one.
And then on top of that, the other album I've been listening to is I can't remember. It's something super. Oh, Kate Nash. I've been like bumping some Kate Nash. So if you're looking for some existential music,
oh jeez,
get into Kate Nash. Otherwise, no, that's not how it goes. Where can people find us?
Facebook
At DCMWorks Social.
YouTube.
YouTube.com/DCMWorks.
Twitter.
At DCM_works.
Patreon.
Patreon.com/DCMworks. If you want to support us, our subscriptions start at $3 a month. You get access to all kinds of behind the scenes and exclusive content. You also get access to our post show, which we're about to record. We do it every week after the podcast. Almost every week, unless it's really late. Where we kind of pick apart topics, we read comments, and we also answer Patreon questions. There's about 65 hours of additional content at the moment. We're building up a bank. You also get access to the exclusive Spider-Man Homecoming video essay. And an early look at an upcoming video essay that I have. Featuring some pretty famous Australian hip-hop artists. So check that out. Can't say anything else on this stream, but
David!
you know how it is.
Oh my God.
We out here making shit happen, so you can check that out. Starts at $3 a month and get access to all kinds of stuff. And also just helps us do what we do. We've got a preview going up in about 2 weeks' time for probably the biggest video project I've done in a long time. Which you're involved with.
I am involved in this one.
Yeah, previews coming
I
up
do
for
know
that
what this one is.
in about 2 weeks, so keep an eye out for that. I think it's going to be either my magnum opus or the worst thing I've ever done. So
one or the other.
Keep your eyes peeled for that.
Yeah.
And then otherwise, if you're a Patreon, there's a video going up in a few weeks.
Or a magnum opus about the worst thing he's ever done.
Exactly.
Or the worst thing he's ever done about his magnum opus. We don't know yet. Who's to say?
Depends if I've grown and changed, doesn't it? And then also we've got an announcement coming up to do with that Adley, which we'll touch on the Patreon and eventually do. Like
it's just a lot.
Do a YouTube
just
thing,
a lot happening.
There's a lot of things going on
over at patreon.com.
Exactly. But otherwise, if people wanted to follow us individually, I'm at DCM Hate Pie.
I'm at Literal Citrus.
We'll see you guys next week.
Yep. We will. All right.